let's go over question number 1704. Determine if string halves are alike. Now the question says you are given a string S of even length, so it's an even length. Split this string into two halves of equal length and let A be the first half and B be the second half. Two strings are alike if they have the same number of vowels. So this is a key statement. It's alike if it has same number of vowels, and these are our vowels, right? Notice that S contains uppercase and lowercase letter, so we have to count for cases where it's lowercase and case where it's upper. Return true if A and B are alike, otherwise return false. So if the number of vowels for right and left vowels are the same, we are going to return true, otherwise it's going to be false. Now let's look at our example 1. So what we have to do is we have to split the string in half. So this is going to be left, this is going to be right. And for each character, we have to check the number of vowels. So for left, we have one vowel, which is O, and for right, we have another O. So left is equal to right, so we return true. For the second one, we split over here, and we have one vowel for the first half, which is E, and for the second one, we have two, which is two O's. So that's two, right? And does L equal to R? No, it doesn't. So this is going to return false. And we are going to do that for all the characters. Now, I can think of two ways to do this. Well, the first one is split the string into two, so left and right, and have a counter for left and right. And check later, is L equal to R? And we just return this. Second one is, well, we do have to split left and right, but we actually don't have to have a separate counter for left and right over here. What we can do is we can just have one counter and set it, if left has a vowel, we can increase. If right has a vowel, we can decrease. So if it was the case that they had the same number of vowels, counter would evaluate to 0. Otherwise, it's going to be some other number, whether it's 1 or -1. But as long as counter is equal to 0, that means that they have same number of vowels. And then we can do something like return exclamation mark counter. And if it was the case that counter evaluated to 0, this exclamation mark 0 would evaluate to true, and that way we could get our answer. If you guys find this helpful, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Thanks. Now let's go over our first solution, and our first solution, well, actually all the solutions are going to have the same time and space complexity, which is going to be O of n for time and O of 1 for space. Now, as we discussed in our first part of this video, what we can do is we can split our given string into two left and right halves and create two variables to store the count of the vowels. So first, I want to make a variable that stores all the vowels, and that's going to be an array. So A, E, I, O, U, and we're going to name it vowels. Okay, that looks good. And next, I'm going to create a variable to store the left half of the string. I'll name it left, and this is going to be slice from index 0 till s.length divided by 2. And we need the right side, and let's name it right, and we can just get rid of this one for the right one. Now let's just console log our left and right, and you can see that we have our split string. And remember that the question said we are always going to be given an even length of string. Okay, so that looks good. And now I want to iterate through my strings. So for let I is equal to 0 and I is going to be less than, well, it's going to be less than s.length divided by 2. Because remember, there is no reason to keep looping through the whole thing because we are splitting our string into half. That means that we just have to iterate 2 times for the first one, 4 times for the second one, and so on and so forth. And we're going to increment I by 1 each time. Next, I need to check, well, if my current character is a vowel for the left, I want to increase the left vowel count. And if it's right, I want to increase the vowel count for the right one. So let's make 2 variables. I'll call it left count and set this equal to 0, and another one will be right count, and this will also be 0. Now I need to check if my current string, so it'll be left at index I dot, we're gonna convert this to lowercase, And we need to check if this lowercase letter is in our vowels array or not. So in order to do that, we're going to use vowels.includes. So what includes does is, just should be vowels. So what this does is we check, well, is this element or this character in our vowels array? If it is, this is gonna obviously evaluate the true, and then we want to increase the left count, right? So we increment by 1. What if our right string or our current character at the right side of the string has a vowel? Well, we need to increase the right count. So we need pretty much the same statement. So let's just copy this over, and this time this is going to be right, and this should be right count. Now let's just console log our left and right count. So you can see that we have our number of vowels for our left side and the right side of the string. For the first string, we should have 1 each, so 1 and 1. For the second one, we're going to have 1 and 2. So that's what we have. And for the following ones, we have 1 and 2 and 1 and 1. So that looks good, right? But we're not done yet. We need to return a Boolean value. If they're equal to each other, we're going to return true. If not, we are going to return false. So how do we handle that? Well, what we can do is just return left count is equal to right count. And as you can see, we have our results. So true, false, false, true, which looks good. Now let's just go over our code one more time. So we create an array to store our vowels, and we split our string into 2 halves, which is going to be left and right. And we make 2 variables to keep the count of the number of left vowels and the right vowels. Now we iterate through the array, and we iterate until I is less than string.length divided by 2. And the reason is because there is no reason to keep looping through when we have a split string. And then next we check, well, does the current element that's lowercase in the vowels array? If it is, we're gonna increase the left count. If the current right character is in the vowels array, we're gonna increase the right count. Now you can actually just get rid of this lowercase and just include capital letters for A, E, I, O, U, and that should work exactly the same way. But I just chose to leave it like this. Finally, we check, well, is the count of left and right equal to each other? If it is, it's gonna return true. If not, it's going to return false. Now let's go over our second solution, and our second solution is pretty much going to be the same as before, but let's just try to implement the different ones so that we can, just think more about the problem and then maybe just get better over time. Now for this one, as we talked about in our intro video, we're going to have just one counter that we are going to return later. So we're not going to have a separate one for left and right. So that does save us space just a little bit. And remember how we sliced our string into 2? Well, this time we're not going to do that. We're just going to, instead of slicing, we're just going to look at the first one and the second one and compare. Compare the second one and the third one and then compare, or check if it's a vowel. So let's start coding. I'm going to make a vowels string this time. So it'll be A, E, I, O, U. And this time I'm just going to put in the capital ones too, just to switch things up a little. And going to make a count variable. Now we need to iterate through our array. So for let I is equal to 0, and we're going to iterate as long as string.length minus 1 minus I, and increment by 1 each time. Now, why didn't we just use string.length divided by 2? Well, to be honest, you could have done that, but I just wanted to use something different just for fun. Now, if you don't know what this evaluates to, so this is going to refer to the last character in the first iteration, and then it's going to refer to the second to last character in the second iteration. So as I increases, this is going to decrease. So now we need to check if vowels dot includes, if the array or string includes my current character, which is going to be represented by string at index I. So that's the first character, right? If it includes that character, what I want to do is I want to increase my count by 1. Well, what if it's the other case? If my right side had so this side, right? Okay. If my right side had a vowel, I want to decrease my count. So if vowels that includes string, but this time the index is going to be different. So index is going to be string.length minus 1 minus I. If that's the case, we are going to decrement by 1 each time. And again, this index starts at the last index, and as I gets bigger, it's going to get smaller by 1 each time. So in the first iteration, string at index I is going to evaluate to B, and string at string length -1 minus I is going to be K. In the second iteration, this one is going, string at index I is going to be O. And second iteration, this one is going to be the second O, or the third element. So you can just think of it as this one moves to the right, this one moves to the left. Now what we need to do is we need to evaluate our count. So return, we're going to give an exclamation mark. And before that, let's just console log count. And you can see that we have 0, -1, -1, and 0. So when it's 0, it means that it has same number of vowels, because if it had vowels in the left one, our count would increase. If we had vowels in the right one, our count will decrease. So meaning that if this increased by 1 and if this decreased by 1, we will have a count of 0, which means that we have 1 vowels for each. Now we want to return our result. So when it's 0, that means that we want to return true, right? So if you don't know what exclamation does, when we have a value and an exclamation, it's going to give us a true or false value. So 0 evaluates to false in JavaScript, and 1 evaluates to true in JavaScript. So if you were to give exclamation mark, it's going to give us the opposite value. So let's console log exclamation mark false, that's going to give us true. And if you were to do exclamation mark 0, that's also going to give us true. So it's that logic. And so we're going to return count here, and we should get our result. So we have true, false, false, true, which looks good. And that's our solution. If you guys find this helpful, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Thanks.